Like Prime in the chat. Okay, yeah, look, this microphone.
We got the microphone going.
Hey, Mike, can you say something real quick?
This is me saying things.
Well, I feel like he probably needs to come through here.
All right,
So we're picking him up on the mic.
say something.
All right,
Much better.
here I am. Now I
Okay.
can see you.
Perfect. All right. So we're live. We pressed live, and here we are now. Hello, Internet. My name's Curtis. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This the October edition of the New Orleans Gamedev Meetup. Let's switch to camera and screen. Oh, great. It's too big. Okay, Ben's going to fix it. This is the October edition of the New Orleans Gamedev Meetup. I'm Curtis Cummings, one of your lovely co-organizers here for the meetup. I'm joined with Ben Walker.
Yeah, I'm Ben.
Who's also right there. And we're here at the marvelous Sea Cave Arcade in the Bywater of New Orleans, along with our massive live studio audience. Say hello, audience. We just have good microphones now, so you can't hear the raucous cheering, but we assure you it's there. So, if you're just joining us for the first time, it'd be very interesting that you found us, but welcome. It's great that you're here. Can't advance the slide with a remote, but I can do that. So this is New Orleans Gamedev Meetup. We meet the third Thursday of every month. I forgot to remove the second point on this slide, since we're not meeting in person, which is a lie, because we're right here in real life.
It's true.
So you can scan this QR code, which is a little obscured by
It'll still work.
our camera, but it doesn't matter. To join our Discord, where we have we have our hack night on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. and we meet on the third Thursday of every month here at the Sea Cave in New Orleans. There's supposed to be community announcements here. I don't think we have any announcements.
No, we were going to go over the donations.
Oh yeah. So if you may remember from the last 2 months, we had a hurricane here, Hurricane Ida. It didn't mess with us too hard here in New Orleans, but messed with other places, kind of south and to the west of us. And so
Like every house has a tarp on it still.
yeah, every house has a tarp, except some houses, but a lot of them do. But we banded together as a community, and we made a bundle for Itch, and we raised on Itch. We officially raised like 27,000.
Yeah, it's ballpark around there.
Yeah, we raised 27 on Itch, and then we got some other donations after the fact directly to us. And I think we ended up with a total of like 35, 33, something like that. And we gave the money out.
Yep.
So we benefited the Bucket Brigade,
Cajun Navy,
the Cajun Navy,
SPCA.
the LA SPCA, Baton Rouge Food Bank.
There was a Northeast one.
Yeah, something in New York. I don't remember.
We should
Sorry.
print off the list.
We should have made a
try and pull
list.
it up, and we'll go through the actual.
But we gave a lot of people a lot of money. It was very good, very helpful. Probably. I hope it was helpful at least. So thank you to everyone who participated in the bundle and donated a game to help raise money, and especially thank you to everyone who actually gave money. And, of course, the industry folks that helped along the way. We had money from Raw Fury, from New Blood, from Iron Galaxy, Annapurna Interactive. Like, we had a huge outpouring of funds from just like industry giants, pretty much. And so from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for all the money and all the help with organizing it. And a special shout out to my board who gave the meetup presentation last month, who kind of helped spearhead the whole deal. Here we go. It's 28,000 that we raised on Itch itself.
Yeah.
And here you see some of the wonderful games we have
I don't.
that were for sale.
Well, I don't know how to use your computer, Curtis, but yes, you can see it.
It's okay. I don't know how to use it either. Well, with all that fun stuff out of the way, oh wait, we have another announcement. If you haven't heard the news, there's a new game studio in town. What's it called? Possibility Space. There's a new studio by Jeff Strain, Jeff Winter, Edgar Winter, Jeff Strain. Jeff Strain, industry legend, whose name I totally remembered. I did say it right the first time, so I did remember it. He's a co-founder of, was it ArenaNet? The people make Guild Wars. Yeah. He's been around. He's been around all over the place, and he opened a studio here in New Orleans. It's from what I hear, like a completely remote team. I think he might be in New Orleans, and there's some people here in New Orleans. But you know, that's cool. It's always great to have a new studio, especially with big names attached to it. So that window's on the right screen. Yeah. Sorry, we're having a little technical difficulties here. Oh, here we go. The Cajun Navy, Bucket Brigade, Baton Rouge Food Bank, LASPCA, Imagine Waterworks, House of Tulip, and that doesn't have the New York one, I don't think. Oh, well. We love you, New York. I've never been to New York, but I hear it's nice. Sometimes. Well, this has been a good rambling of stuff. So I think without further ado, we should introduce our guest, Aruni. So you want to Alt-Tab over to the Zoom window? There we go. All right, so our guest for the evening is Mike Harris, former community member, but still community member in our hearts. How you doing, Mike? Say hello to the adoring audience.
Hey, y'all. Nice to see you. I don't see anyone, but other than Ben, but
I can't help you. I need to see the screen.
So
enough.
let's go ahead and switch to just the screen view, I guess. So, Mike, what are you going to talk to us about?
So, I mean, originally I was just sort of wanted to show up and give a background of how I got into VR development and then answer any questions that people had. But given the size of the audience, maybe we could just make it conversational and sort of chat about VR development in general, where things are headed, and stuff like that.
That sounds perfect.
Sure, let's do it.
Ben, can you pull up the chat?
Yeah.
See if anyone's saying anything.
Yep.
It should be on the laptop monitor.
Oh, look at that.
What we got?
Oh, that's not right.
All right. So, you want to.
So yeah, let me maybe go through like my personal and career background.
Tell us who you are. No one's ever heard of you before.
So my name is Mike Harris. I am, I guess I'm an XR developer. Originally spent my time out there with those fellas and recently relocated on the West Coast to take a position doing VR development at Facebook. Despite all of Curtis's enticements about me divulging interesting information, I actually don't know any. So, but I can say that I'm working on Horizon Worlds over here at Facebook on the West Coast. But I think the thing that I wanted to mention, and I'm not sure, is there anyone in the audience who's like interested in game development? I don't know how many people there are. Is there like 4 people now or 3? All right.
Yeah, we're at 3 in person and like 8 on stream. So I think we've got a few people who like game development.
I mean, one thing that I wanted to talk about is just the idea of having absolutely no idea what I'm doing and throwing yourself against the wall for 5 years, and then you wind up at a large company. So let me skip through some of this stuff. That's my background. Been doing it for about 6 years. I was a philosophy major in undergrad, and then I went to law school because there was no demand for philosophers professionally. I had a lot of anxiety around trial work when I was practicing as an attorney down there in New Orleans. So I taught myself making games as a hobby using YouTube tutorials. Did started learning in Game Maker, and then ended up going to this meetup and talking to folks, meeting Curtis and Ben and a lot of those folks, and getting convinced to take up Unity and cram C# into my head. And I was doing some game development for local developers down there, the Fish Brothers. I don't know. I haven't seen them in a minute. I doubt they're the two of the three that are currently in the audience. But if for some reason they're seeing this,
I think Ian Fish is up in Atlanta these days.
Fair enough. But
I just doxed him. Sorry, Ian Fish, if you're watching.
But they had the old DK1 in their closet while I was doing some game development for them. And they let me borrow it, and then it just kind of set my head on fire. And I got obsessed with making multi-user VR applications. This right here is the first time I got networked hands and leap motion working. On the other end of this is actually Curtis, who was just around the corner, but he was helping me test this. This was an early version of the experience I made that I ended up, that's the stack that I used for that experience. I ended up calling Virtual Strangers, and this got written up by Road to VR and got exhibited at like the Virgin Toronto International Film Festival. Did like a pop-up VR exhibition. So this was in like the summer of 2016, which was totally wild because I still had absolutely no idea what I was doing at this point. But I was exhibiting at this festival, and I ended up exhibiting remotely from my living room out in Carrollton. I did 7 hours a day, meeting a bunch of incredibly nice Canadians, 3 minutes at a time. One of the cool things I learned from this is meeting like that many people over that short a period of time was the wide variety of responses people had to VR. Like some people believing that, thinking that I was an AI, or refusing to think that I was a person, the way that people moved around the environment or picked up or didn't pick up on using their hands. And it just kind of set my head on fire doing that. From there, I got a couple of gigs, one based out of Austin, doing AR VR development for like a small startup. And then for 4 years, I was working at a consultancy based out of Durham, North Carolina, Crosscom, which is where Curtis currently works. And there we just did a bunch of experiments with all sorts of AR and VR equipment over the years. What else do I have in here? Here's me working with those Marines and Navy SEALs, looking awesome in the motion tracking suit that we were using. This is me wearing various headsets. Crosscom. What else I got? Oh, here's some of the projects. So in addition to that, I've done a lot of projects in my free time. One of which was a VR game where you solve a Rubik's Cube from the inside in zero gravity, which I had the privilege of demoing for John Carmack at OC5. Halfway through the experience, he gave me the great feedback that he stopped and looked up at, and he said, this would be impossible to solve. So although I did, one thing that was fun is that when I released this to SideQuest, I figured if I didn't have a win condition, that would be a real asshole move on my part. So I spent like a couple of weeks figuring out how to determine a win condition for the Rubik's Cube, and then I teleported them outside and they could crawl around. And there was this giant sort of like figure over the cube, and if they sort of launched themselves through space, they could crawl in through the figure's eye. And then I just posted my email like back behind inside the little cave where their eye was. And then like 4 months later, I got an email from this like 14-year-old Rubik's Cube savant. He said that he was finding Rubik's Cubes too easy, and he loved my game because it finally gave him enough challenge to work with, which was pretty wild. I also did this was for Oculus's Launchpad program. I did a multi-user, or not multi-user. I did like a minimalist version of Missile Command in VR, sort of experimenting with hand tracking and UX and UI for hand tracking paradigms and like spatial interactions, which is fun to mess around with. I've done a bunch of work on personal multi-user stuff, which we could dive into. There's some videos on my site. Maybe we could watch if people are interested and give some questions about or answer some questions about things that I did around that. And then also in my spare time, I've been working with compute shaders, although this was actually made in VFX Graph with Azure Connect driving the input, but messing around with that and seeing, making weird little art projects. And I may have already mentioned this, but I feel like the lesson that I hope people learn about VR during this conversation today, the takeaway message is no one really knows what the hell they're doing. It's still early days. Everyone has a chance to do something that might shape the future of what this is. And yeah, that's all I got. Let me kill this.
Very nice.
Y'all still there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Cool.
Hey, Mike, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Were you personally responsible for the outage at Facebook the other day?
I'm so glad that I was not.
First day on the job, you take down the whole thing.
Yeah, I went from complaining to my Airbnb host about the Wi-Fi being out to being a very interesting day. That's for sure.
So you've been doing this since like the DK1. What parts of it are you still excited for? What parts of it do you think have the most ways to go in terms of development and what the experience could be?
That's a good question. I mean, for me, the interesting stuff is hanging out with other people in VR. I remember like early in the pandemic, I had met somebody on one of the dating apps, and they happened to have a Quest headset. So we went on a date in VR chat, which was wild. I actually went as like a little 3 foot tall gray fox, and they were like 9 feet tall. You know, I had to ask them to press all the buttons to like travel to the worlds for me. It was a wild experience. And then also my dad was like trapped in his house in Oroville, you know, and I couldn't see him. So I made like a little pub with like hand tracking and stuff so we could go in there and hang out with him. And there's actually like a moment where I gave him like a virtual hug, which was like kind of intense, more than I expected. And so I think we kind of just scratched the surface of those sorts of interactions, you know, doing stuff like this in VR maybe. I'm actually interested, Ben, what you think, and Curtis, about like VR for games versus, you know, like, I mean, it's starting off with games, but what other things you think that it's going to be useful for?
I mean, there's a lot of things it could be useful for. There's a lot of things it could not be useful for as well. I think like we're pretty early, you know, in the VR days. You think about like other forms of media, like I like to bring up movies. When they figured out like, you know, you could take a constant stream of still images and make it look like things were moving on a screen, they didn't know what the hell to do with that kind of technology. The first movies that existed were just like recreations of stage plays where the fourth wall is where the camera was, and they just acted like they were doing a play. And that sucks. It's terrible. It wasn't until some, you know, some genius figured out, oh, wait, I can, like, move this, and, like, we can have angles and different stuff. And then eventually Citizen Kane came out, and now people won't shut the hell up about that movie.
Yeah. No, I largely feel the same way as Curtis. It feels like when we first got, like, smartphones and like, early smartphone apps, and nobody knew what the hell they were doing, especially, like, games-wise and app-wise, too. You know, everybody tried to do skeuomorphism or just take experiences that already worked in one form of interaction and then like shoehorn them into something that they weren't made for.
Yeah, I think phone apps is like the example that like sort of evolved the quickest. But like pretty much any form of media, like movies, video games, apps, websites, like it takes a good decade and a half to start getting the feel of like what people are actually looking for and like how you're going to make an experience that people give a shit about. And we're just so early, so much on the ground floor of VR. It was only like 5 years ago that we got the hand-tracked controllers, and we don't even have haptics yet. So, you know, we're gonna slowly make our way up there. But it's exciting to be, you know, I'm a VR developer myself, so it's exciting to be on the ground floor.
I feel like locomotion is super lacking. You know, some people do really well with the teleporting and you know, sliding motion, and others, you know, just become violently ill when they move the wrong way.
Once we
master that's one thing that. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say once we master the Star Trek holodeck, like forced like reorientation, where you're just walking in a circle, but you think you're walking in a straight line. I think that's when we'll really get to the good spot in VR. That no one really has, you know, 50 square foot area in their house to walk in a circle like an idiot, but.
We can all get VR treadmills.
I don't know. I wonder if it's even going to be like useful, like trying to simulate regular locomotion in VR. You know, like I've put my fists like into enough monitors to feel like who's going to have enough space for it. On top of that, like if you're going across like different topology while you're walking, and teleportation feels like super removed. You know, I think maybe we'll just all be 0G type locomotion, just have something completely different than what we're used to in real life. And maybe that'll be kind of like the, you know, BlackBerry scroll wheel of smartphones or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the game, but the push off a surface is by far my favorite type of VR locomotion.
It was cute.
It is
it's
definitely it's definitely the most fun way to do it. What's chat saying? Do we have any chat going on? What's the deal? Oh wait, hold.
What are your thoughts on the 360 treadmill? I think they just released a commercial version of that, where you kind of wear a belt and then you can walk in any direction and your feet slide along the bottom of it as a form of locomotion.
Is that like the new OmniTrack?
Yeah.
I'm looking it up right now. No. You know, I've never tried the one. This is the one where you wear like this special booties and then your feet like slide as you're moving around. I think it's useful insofar as like probably for motion sickness, as long as you're like moving your body, it probably helps you feel more comfortable. But I doubt that your brain is tricked into feeling like you're actually like running along the ground. I got to try the one that was like the omnidirectional treadmill in the early days. That's sort of like moving underneath you. And even that had like the exact same issues about sort of like the slope of where you're walking on. Like so much of navigating the world is like stairs and ramps and stuff like that, you know, little curbs or different surfaces that you're walking on. And then as soon as you feel like you're just walking on the same treadmill, your brain automatically knows that it's not real. And also I wonder, like you have this big hulking thing in your environment. Have either of y'all tried like the arm swinger or like the other sort of locomotion that makes you move, and it's sort of like by swinging your arms? Well, I think like if you put in an interaction paradigm like that, your brain just makes it up and tells you that it's the real thing if it's close enough. But that said, I'd love to try an OmniTrack.
Yeah, I did.
At some point.
For Headspace, at one point I was making a VR version where like it wasn't first person, it was still third person, but you were like kind of like just behind him, and you swung your arms, and that made the guy move, and you kind of just like trailed behind him, and that was very strange, like out of body and peculiar. But yeah, I read an article once from some dude at Sony who was like working on the PlayStation VR stuff. And he was like one of the first people that I saw, like when you're in VR and you have like fake arms, if your arm's not bent the way your actual arm is, because was that a proprioception, like being aware of like your body's orientation, it'll take you out more than just having floating hands. Because if you know all your field of vision's like taken over and you just have hands and they're where your hands are, your brain will be like, Oh yeah, those are my hands. I have arms, but I don't need to see them. If you have arms in VR and they're wrong, your brain will go, "What's going on? This is stupid. You're dumb. Like this isn't real." So yeah, I think what you're saying about the treadmill thing is like pretty spot on. Like as soon as you realize like this is different than like what I should be doing from what I see, your brain's just gonna like kick you out of the suspension of disbelief or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it goes both ways. I remember the first time I played Super Hot on the CV1. I played through like it in a single run through because I thought it was great. And like for those who don't know, it's got this mechanic so that if you're moving in space, that's what causes time to move forward. So you end up sort of like as bullets are coming by you, like rocking back and forth to get them to move so that you could dodge them. And I remember afterwards, like pulling off my headset and messaging my buddy, telling him that he had to try it. And as I was messaging him, I saw the little like waiting dots showing that he was typing, and I was feeling impatient about it. So I started rocking back and forth to try to get the message to come faster before realizing what had happened to my brain. Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
I remember the first time I played Super Hot on Rift, I punched my wall.
Yeah.
And that hurt.
Yeah.
So where are we at? Anyone got questions? Anyone got comments? What can you tell us about Horizons? Is that Facebook's new name?
So Horizon Worlds is Facebook's. It's a multi-user application where people can collaborate and build worlds together, and sort of build behaviors in those worlds and travel to them with friends and family.
Wow, I work on something like that. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
What are your favorite types of non-game interactions in VR? Like, I feel like everybody talks about VR games, but it seems like you could use it for a whole lot more.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, I know at some point you mentioned to me you were taking like business meetings in VR.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah. I started which was a great multiplayer mini golf game. So we do like the back nine putt, while closing business deals with each other in VR. It was great. I got really good. I would always crush them, which I think helped seal the deal. But yeah, I mean, like hanging out with other people, I think is the best part about it. I still think Google Earth is one of the more amazing VR experiences, although now it's probably relegated to people who have PC-based VR, and that's, I'm sure, fallen by the wayside more and more these days. But I remember one time, like in Google Earth VR, just spending an afternoon going to all of the mountaintops in North America and like controlling the sun to make the sunset and figuring out which one had the best sunset. That was pretty wild. And then always throwing people in there and having them go back to like their childhood neighborhoods and stuff like that is always a trip.
The first thing I did when I loaded it up, so went back to where I used to live. Super trippy.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do was to zoom it over my actual apartment in New Orleans, like down to the roof level. So it was about the scale of where I was in the right orientation. And then you just zoom out as quickly as you can and try to convince your brain that you're being sort of like abducted out into the stratosphere. That was a lot of fun.
So we have a question from the chat, which is, do you think there's a fidelity gap limiting VR at the moment? Abresh once talked about how important complex geometry would be in interpreting a sort of PBR-based VR environment, like how bricks have to have individual chips and dust to sort of bridge the gap of feeling. So
the gap of feeling.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that talk by Abresh, but I mean, it's tough because sometimes like it's like this question of immersion, and I think it was like Kent Bai from Voices to VR like broke it down into several categories. There's sort of immersion at like a flow task, there's immersion of thinking that it's an actual world that you're in. There's immersion of thinking that you're like interacting with actual people. And so I don't think it like is just like a sliding scale across them. And I don't know if it's necessarily like fidelity that does it. I also think that kind of like that initial sort of jarring presence of feeling like you're actually in a world, like it doesn't last. When you're doing this for years, it might not be that valuable in the long run. Plus, like some like low poly or simplistic graphics games actually make you feel a lot more present than other ones. I think it has a lot to do with like your actions than the actual fidelity environment. That said, I mean, it couldn't hurt. I'm sure the more realistic this stuff gets, the more fascinating it's going to be. But until we have living rooms large enough that you're not, accidentally punching through a window when you're playing a game, I think that'll always be a limiting factor too. Certainly for training. Yeah. Anyways.
Are you ever disappointed when you try and interact with stuff in VR and are unable to?
Yeah. I gave like a talk on VR UX design at like All Things Open several years back. And by far, like the slide that everyone said was the most useful was one where I said, you do one thing, it's let the users in your experience throw stuff. There's nothing pisses off people more than like grabbing an object and not being able to throw it and it just sticks there, or there's something on the table that they can't pick up. So I think that's one bit of advice for any VR developers: is don't put anything within arm's reach if they can't pick it up, because you're going to piss some people off if you do.
I know in the games we made a point of letting you have physics interactions any way you wanted. Like normally you were slingshotting these small animals, but you had a wand that you could use it like a baseball bat if you really wanted to, and that worked just as well. So
yeah.
Anytime
I
it's
feel
just
like
glued down as a static model, it drives me nuts.
Yeah, you have to think of like everyone who's playing your game as if it's like a developer that's in there trying to break it, because everyone will, whether they're a developer or not.
Has that influenced how you make, your own projects or the projects, that you've done in a work?
That's a good question. Yeah, I make them a lot simpler, and focus a lot on like tiny, minute details of it, because it's too big of a task to sort of control everything, especially because like the inputs are like massive, right? People can move their heads anywhere. They can click through walls. They could like have their hands in any orientation to each other, let alone hand tracking, which is its own beast, I think.
Problems that you just don't worry about. Like, I know in the past on various projects, there's been a lot of talk about, if they stick their head through the wall, then they could see back here. And I personally think, unless it's really important for the gameplay of what you're making or the experience that you're making, that you shouldn't bother with it at all. And people generally stay in bounds unless they have some reason not to.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if you're doing something that people feel immersed and they buy into the world, that they'll naturally follow the rules that they will for an actual environment. And yeah, like if they want to cheat, like I don't think that's that hard to pull off anyways. And like that also speaks to what Curtis said earlier about the sort of having arms attached at the shoulder to your hands. Like, it's much easier for your body to buy into it, even when it's just floating hands, And so worrying about getting the kinematics right on the elbow actually is probably not a necessary lift, especially if you're like a solo dev working on a project.
We have another follow-up question on chat here. Hey, Mike, following on the question above, how important is depth perception, focus, depth of field, and how close are we to getting that? To me, that's the part of VR that could increase immersion more.
That's a great question. Everyone's actively working on that. So what he's referring to is the fact that like there's two systems that work in conjunction in order for us to focus on objects at different distances. There's vergence, which is sort of your eyes crossing or moving farther apart based on how far an object is. And there's accommodation, which is the focusing of your corneas to sort of like to change the depth that you're focused at. And right now, like VR does well with vergence for objects at different distances, but there's no accommodation. Everything is perfectly in focus everywhere. So those two systems become out of sync. There's some talk about that being a leading cause of VR sickness. I haven't read up on what that is lately. But yeah, I wonder, I've never experienced like a headset that has sort of like multiple levels of like focal distances or adaptive focal length. I wonder what that would feel like. I do notice in myself that like after 6 years, I don't focus as well, like on close objects, and I can't adjust as quickly. But I'm also almost 40, so who knows
Do you
what the
still
main cause of that is.
do you still get a different sense of depth perception after wearing a headset for a long time? Or
Yeah, I
is that
still, where
gone
is
away?
it? Yeah, no. Every morning. So I have like this lazy eye that like gets like shifts off to the right if I'm really tired or if I've been drinking too much. And but the problem is that on like the early headsets, there's like a little slider that let you change the distance between the two lenses. And I realized that over time, what I was doing is adjusting it so that my eye could become uh, more and more sort of out of sync. And then like everything would be perfectly sort of stereo in the headset. And then I would take off the headset and things would feel less real because I was essentially just deleting the one eye that was out of focus, which, you know, in the early days, that kind of scared the shit out of me, feeling like the actual world was less real than VR after months in there. But now I do like these little pencil exercises now to keep my eyes in check. And they also have some like apps for doing that in VR too. But
Yeah, I always get that like few seconds after I take the headset off where I'm just like, oh crap, this is reality. I forgot what this looks like for a second.
yeah, everything's
Actually,
a skybox now. Like whenever I look out at the clouds
mean,
of the sunset.
I have a theory that because you have no accommodation and you're relying on your versions for all your depth perception, that as soon as you take the headset off and you're able to have this extra sense that you were missing, that you notice your focal depth that much more.
Here we got a question from the audience over here.
Yeah, we have a question from the audience, and then we're gonna follow that up with another one from chat.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what is it like going from being a solo developer into working for a company like Facebook? Like, do you feel creatively bankrupt in any way, or do you have plans for like sort of like afterwards to like make your dream game, or is this where it is?
I mean, I think that's a great question, but like going back to what I said about the future being kind of made up, I think like anywhere that you are, if you have enough initiative, you could do something that's going to change, that might have a chance of changing the future of what VR is like. I mean, I don't think anyone thinks that they've got it figured out at this point. Like the weird games that I made about sort of like people dodging the causes of death as they age, probably those we have to be done on my free time now. But no, I mean, in terms of VR development, I think having resources is amazing. Obviously, like being able to be a solo dev, it makes you pretty nimble because you don't have to worry about anyone looking at your terrible code or having to understand it. But no, I mean, I think it's still wide open. There's tons of opportunities, so I wouldn't steer away from that. Just sort of, stay hungry about it.
Just as a follow up to that, have you found that you're like, sorry, this one's a little hard for me at first. The types of experiences you can build, like as a solo dev, do you find those limiting, and do you enjoy working in a larger team? And overcoming some of those.
That's a great point. I mean, like one of the hardest parts is sort of like art. You spend your I could have spent the past 6 years just learning how to make stuff in Blender, but you have to kind of prioritize. And like I did, just make stuff out of cubes and spheres and make it look as pretty as possible with baked lighting, because I mean, there's just too much stuff out there to know. So yeah, being part of a large team with all of those resources is pretty amazing.
All right, we had another.
I don't have to bug Curtis and Alec to look over my shitty code all the time too, which is another
Hey,
bonus.
I'm always open. I look at shitty code all day.
I love making art for Curtis's projects.
Yeah, Ben made me a very nice crate once.
I did. It landed you a job.
Yeah, I did.
All right, so we have a follow-up question from chat. How hard is it then to get the player to behave in a VR environment? Like how, without taking away the ability to throw objects, can you make sure that your player doesn't run amok in every scene that you place them in?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. And it's hard to get them to like, I mean, like I think that's the other thing is that like you can have all of these expectations about how people are going to behave unless you test it. You just got to test early and with a bunch of people and with people who aren't experienced with VR, because I don't know. Yeah, it's really hard to figure that out. You know, you can have some intuitions about it, but if you're trying to test it yourself, you know, like maybe 50% of the time it turns out like I expected. And even then I think my brain's exaggerating. So
Yeah, I can say with utmost certainty that no matter like how clear you think you've like designed like an interaction or like an experience or whatever, some jackass is going to get in there and start doing the wrong stuff. And then, you know, if you're at the unfortunate position to like being there in person while they're doing it, they're going to like look at you like a sad dog that's been beaten its whole life and is like, what am I doing wrong? And you're just like, everything.
Actually, like, do either of you have good stories about like people just not understanding an experience or completely breaking it?
Oh, I have a story about someone not understanding experience. Do you have? Yeah, I can share it. Mike, do you have one you want to share first? Because I'm gonna make myself out to be an asshole.
Let me think about it for a little bit.
Okay, well, I'll tell my story. I'm gonna
first.
sound like a real big dick, but or jerk, whatever. So we were having this event a couple years ago called Post Pixel. We organized. It was kind of in line with this thing that LED and GNO, which are Louisiana Economic Development, Greater New Orleans Inc., nonprofits that help drive business here in New Orleans and Louisiana in general. They had this like event for people in the industry so they could send them to Jazz Fest and schmooze them and get them to try to open a studio here. I need to pick my words wisely here. But anyway, we had like a few tables set up so that local developers could show off like games and stuff they were working on, so that these people that were coming and possibly opening a studio here would see like the pool of talent that they could pull from that was like native here and born and grown here, so that they could be more confident about opening a studio and stuff. So I was there showing off one of my games, and this guy comes up. I don't know his name. I don't know what company he works for. I know he's like some kind of marketing dude or whatever. But he comes up and he sees my game and he's like, "Hey man, this is like a pretty interesting game. Like, what's going on? What's the deal?" I was like, "Hey man, you wanna like play it? You know, you can have a good time." And he's like, "No, I much prefer to watch you play it." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, dude, whatever." So I start playing my game. This is like a surreal horror game. There's no point. It's like meandering. The only characters in the game just speak nonsense to you. There's like inventory puzzles that don't go anywhere. It's like dumb. Like you wouldn't want to play it. It's a bad experience. But anyway, so I'm playing it and I'm kind of like explaining like, "Oh yeah, this is a homeless dude and like, you know, he wants some money, but you don't have a wallet. So you better look around and try to find a wallet or something so you can give him some money." And so the guy just like keeps interrupting me while I'm playing the game. He's like, "So let me ask you this, like, how would you convince someone to play this game?" No, he said, "Why would someone want to play this game?" I said, I don't know, man. Like, why would anyone want to do literally anything? Like, you know, it's a personal question. You can't expect me to tell you why someone would play the game. He's like, let me ask that again. How would you try to convince someone to play this game? I was like, "Oh, that's easy. I would not. I would never try to force this upon someone, only if they really wanted to do it." And then he was like, "All right, pretend like I'm a simpleton." And I was like, "All right, I'm there." And he's like, "How would you like sell this game?" And I was like, "I would not. I would never charge anyone any dollar amount to play this piece of shit. I'm making you. You're not even playing it. I'm playing it for you." Like, dude just did not understand the game. And every time I show the game somewhere, someone comes up, someone talks to me about it, and they're like, "Oh man, it'd be really nice if like you could do this or there's this control." And it's be like, "I know. That's why you can't." It's not supposed to be nice. It's supposed to make you like feel like you're wasting your time. And yeah, that's my story about people not getting it.
Yeah,
Get it?
I don't think I have any
Some people
stories
do.
that are nearly as interesting as that one. Although, like returning to that point that that I think it was Alec that was making about how to get people to behave certain ways in VR. One thing I have been thinking about is spatialized audio. So like, it's kind of like audio is weird when it's spatial, because it's kind of like a not even 360 degrees, because it's vertical as well. But like, it's a type of spatial awareness that we don't think about. Like, we're aware of our environment, but it's not even just where we're looking at, it's everywhere. So driving people's behavior by putting like audio cues somewhere where you want them to look at something or move over to an area is one way to do it. That's pretty effective. And I think also a lot of that hasn't been explored enough yet, like using audio in VR specifically.
Yeah, I mean, you keep hearing that we're gonna get audio transfer functions, so you'd get your ear measured, and then you'd get proper spatialized audio. But I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, that would be sweet.
Yeah, I don't like how like all the new headsets that come out, they just have like the little speakers on the straps, or like by the optics or whatever. It's just like, no, it's not going to be like fully immersive no matter what your marketing text says. You're like, you need to cover the ear, like put something inside of it. Like, you really got to block off everything else around you, otherwise your brain's going to get wires crossed and stuff. And sounds very important.
Did either of you get a chance to try the Nausea Rift? I don't know if it's still around. The Kickstarter.
The news thing, right?
Yeah,
No.
I had the
I've
sense.
never gotten to try it. Emerald's been talking about smell-o-vision for like 30 years.
Did you ever
so.
try putting virtual noses in your experience? I remember
haven't.
that was a trend for a while.
Right, to avoid motion sickness. That's right.
Remember the first time I heard that, I thought like they were just like lying and it was like just a joke. I was like, I can't see my nose. What are you talking about? How can that, like, no matter which eye I close, you still can't see it. But that's the trick. Your brain just doesn't care about it. Pretends it's not there. Let's see.
Let me see if we have any more questions.
I'm Calder. What? No.
All right. I had one for you. So we went over, where we think the headsets have room for improvement, and also the audio. How do you feel about the state of like hand tracking and controllers and?
Sorry, Calder. Oh, how do I feel about the state of hand tracking and controllers?
Do you think there's a long way to go? Is it pretty good?
I mean, so like hand tracking is like an input paradigm. It's super, like, it's so easy because you're there and then your hands. But the problem is that, like, I mean, this is actually, I think, like the BlackBerry iPhone discussion, right? Like, as a developer, like an engineer or something, like, I want a keyboard with buttons that has like input that I could then just, develop, knowing that like if they're pressing an H key, it's just an H key. If you told me like the first smartphones that before someone could press H, I had to sort of figure out touch disambiguation and like sort of haptic feedback, and then that little like pop-up that shows them what letter they're pressing, like so much work had to go into getting rid of the physical keyboard to have input that's like, worse, I think, even still, than those BlackBerry keyboards were. And I think the same goes for controllers versus hand tracking. Like, I love having like buttons and like fixed position that I could use to develop something. But I think the harder thing is actually developing for hand tracking ways that interactions that work. But the harder problem, I think that's the one that will get solved eventually. It's my thought. I don't know, what do y'all think?
We need to bring back the T-Mobile Sidekick. It's coolest phones ever created.
I mean, personally, for me, it's not so much the controller-based hand tracking that bothers me. It's the lack of haptic feedback, and you can do things with the vibration to let you know, like, when you're interacting with something, but like feeling something push back against you, or like the flick of a switch. Those things are very hard to replicate with the controllers like they are now. And then if you move entirely to just, vision-based hand tracking, you lose even that.
Maybe like gloves.
Yeah, I've seen a couple haptic glove prototypes.
I like the ones that are like, they have motors on the back of the hand, and it's like strings attached to the finger. Yeah.
It's going to be a pretty big ask to get people to buy like your haptic gloves in addition to your headset and suit up every time.
Mike, have you used?
But even then, you don't
PS5
have the
controller?
resistance. Yeah, I have actually. It's pretty.
Trigger have like variable, resistance to them. I'm really excited for the new PlayStation VR headset because they have their hand controller is going to have those triggers in them.
Right.
So that should be pretty sweet.
You
Yeah.
ever tried using audio?
Go back to the like gloves thing though. Oh yeah. So yeah, there's that too. Like in the virtual strangers thing that I made, I actually, when the two like remote and local players like touch fingers, they would like glow, and then I would play a buzzing sound in your ear. They could feel the touch just by playing the buzzing sound, although I think that probably wouldn't fly these days. But yeah, actually, one of the problems with the haptic gloves though is that you don't actually have the proprioceptive pushback. Like you still can't keep someone from passing their hand through a table, even if they feel it sort of like through pressure sensors or resistance on their fingers. Except there was one experiment I saw that I loved, and it was somebody who had like a hand tracker and they hooked up like a 10 system to their bicep and tricep and shoulder, so that when they tried to move their hand through an object, they would sort of tense up their muscles.
That's
I
hardcore.
would love to try that. If anyone feels like setting that up.
Have you seen the Microsoft research? What the hell do they call it? It's like very vulgar looking apparatus that you hold. It's got like ridges that I sound like a maniac, but it's got like these rings, and they get bigger.
And they like
smaller.
slide relative to each other.
No, they like
Yeah.
expand or shrink depending on like the object you're supposed to be holding. They're called like halo rings, O rings, or
Interesting.
something. I don't remember.
Yeah. Sounds like fun.
Airwave? No, not the air vortex stuff. There we go. The first picture, the X ring. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it looks rude, but I don't know. It's kind of cool. It doesn't seem like the optimal solution, but it's an interesting looking device for sure.
Maybe you just use inverse kinematics, and like when you do that, your body just lifts up, super strength or something.
That's how the Walking Dead game works.
Oh no.
Yeah, so the suggestion was using inverse kinematics. Have you experimented with doing IK for interacting with objects to prevent, player limbs from going through things? Or...
Oh, I have.
Oh, like desyncing the hands from the body and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I don't know. I find that just letting it pass through the objects, I think for the same reason that you said, is fine. If you're holding an object, don't let it pass through. But if people let their hands pass through stuff, I think people sort of ignore that. And then you have all of the weird edge cases where like geometry gets caught somewhere and then your hand starts dragging, and that feels terrible. I remember, what was it like? There's some asset that we bought from the Unity asset store that had sort of desynced hands with physics, and when you push your like hand against the wall, it like stuck against the wall, but then your hand would like flip over repeatedly, like as you're going sideways, which felt absolutely terrible. But a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like the Echo Arena and Echo VR thing, where like if you're holding on to like something and your body is supposed to be staying still, but you still move your arm, it makes like a ghost arm come out. Kind of reminds me of the Animatrix, where that person ran so fast they woke up. Watch the Animatrix, it's sweet. Yeah, so I think we're running out of steam here. I can't read what time it is, even though I have glasses on. It looks like 7:50 something.
Yeah, it is right dead on 8 o'clock. So
Okay.
yeah.
There we go.
As much as I love you, Mike, we're gonna have to tell you to go enjoy the California
but
sun.
before you do, is there anything else you want to leave us with a parting thought, or
A parting thought? No, I miss you guys. Be safe. That's it.
I miss you too, buddy.
you get to visit again one day?
That's right.
Yeah, come for the Christmas party. There's not going to be a Christmas party.
Whose couch can I sleep on?
You sleep on my
I
couch.
got a guest room now. You're free to stay.
Ben's got a guest room.
Sweet.
He's also got a
It's now
guest
it's
room.
now recorded indefinitely. So
Yeah. You're free to stay. It's not an open invitation to everybody.
Yeah, sorry everyone else on the internet. Okay.
All right. Well, no, it was great having you, and
Yeah,
thanks
thank
for
you.
doing this,
Yeah,
especially
thank you
on short
for-
notice.
Yeah, such short notice. Thank you for talking with us, for us, at us,
hmm
with, together. I don't know. I'm running out of steam.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, I did think of one thing we missed during the community announcements,
Oh, what?
which is we have the CCAB Cranberry Game Jam coming up in November. We haven't announced
yeah.
dates yet, but I figured I'd start announcing that early.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Cranberry Jam. It's where it
Yeah.
all started.
yeah, I think we're gonna try and have some in-person stuff. We'll see if that works out.
Yeah, we're going to figure it out to talk to.
Yeah.
Scale and
Yeah. We're
other
planning on
people.
having classes open to everybody, and if you want to put your game on the indie cab that we have over there,
Oh, wait, let me turn the camera.
yeah,
Is OBS looking at the camera?
let me. Yeah, I'll. Sorry, Mike, we left you on screen. I'll
See, this,
Yeah.
this
I'll
is
say farewell for real.
This is the indie cap. It's right there. See, it says Crab Control. That's one of the games that's on it. You can play them. There we go.
There we go.
That was good use of time.
All right, everybody. Hack nights on Tuesdays, and I think that's going to be it for us.
Yeah, there's
So-
if you go back to the Google Slides thing
I
with
have
the
a
QR code
parting
one more
slide.
time.
All right.
Parting QR code.
Yeah. I'm not very good at going through all these slides. Hopefully, it's the next one.
Yeah, it's the next one. It's to the right. Very confusing.
I'll
There we
look at
go.
that. All right. So,
So thank you for sticking around.
yeah.
Wash your hands. Message not as relevant these days as it used to be, but still wash your hands. It's very
Yeah,
sanitary and good
we'll
thing to
see
do.
you again in November.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
Video.
Having a hard time with that. I promise I know how to use a computer.